Hare Krishna, welcome back to our Bhakti Yoga Journey series. So today we'll continue with our discussion on Canto 2, chapter number 5. Last time we had a brief discussion on the concept of creation, how Brahmaji, in response to Narada's question, was revealing who is that original primary creator, right? And we saw that ultimately it is Narayan who creates. We saw how Narayana paro yogo, Narayana param tapaha, Narayana param jnanam, Narayana paragatihi, Narayana paradeva, Deva Narayana Angaja. So we saw how it is that ultimate the Supreme Lord Krishna as Narayan. He is that the primary creator. And uh, today's class we are going to discuss what is a slightly complicated topic, especially many times first time readers of the Bhagavad Puran very conveniently like to jump through this section of Bhagavatam because very complicated about what exactly is going on, what is this creation, so many terminologies are going to come in. So today I'll try to simplify this. So I'll use a whiteboard to try to bring in some clarity in terms of what exactly is this whole creation, the Srishti Lila. And remember, we discussed this in the past too, how Sri Prabhupada explains understanding the creation Leela of the Lord is the first step before you venture into Ras Leela or Damodar Leela or any of the intimate pastimes of the Lord. Understanding the creation is very important. Why? Because it is a creation which is shackling us right now. Without breaking free from these shackles, we cannot transcend to a higher dimension and try to access these personal leelas of the Lord. And that's where Bhagavatam's presentation is so amazing. The entire Vedic perspective on creation is so amazing. Because if you remember in our last week's class, we discussed how different philosophies, different traditions all over the world, they have their own story for creation. The cosmogony, they have their own story for creation. And in most of those theories, there is the whole creation is something that has been ordered to manifest. But we saw, like modern science, even the Vedic version, it's not an order-driven creation, but it's an emergence. It emerged out of a certain need. And that theme is what we are going to discuss. But while it may seem like modern science and the Bhagavatam philosophies are very similar, there is one major difference though. In modern science, Prakriti is an independent entity, material nature is an independent entity, and that emergence is happening on its own. Prakriti is the universe is just creating things on its own. There is no higher force behind the creation. And this is where Bhagavatam goes one level deeper. The Bhagavatam explanation of creation, where the world that we live in, it's not just an observable universe, but a participatory universe. What do I mean by these two terms? In modern science, the universe is an independent entity. No matter how you are, the universe is, you do not influence the world around you, right? You and the world are two independent entities. Therefore, you can only observe what is happening in this universe. The state of matter is independent of consciousness. That's what observable universe means. But the Sankhya philosophy, the Bhagavad philosophy, the entire Vedic theory of creation, it is based on the concept, the fundamental concept that this is a participatory universe, which means we, collectively, our consciousness shapes matter. Or in other words, the way the universe is designed is to facilitate our consciousness. Or in other words, our desire is somewhere involved in the way the universe has been designed. If you remember, last time we discussed the Nasadiya Sukta from the Rig Veda, how it describes beautifully that how in the beginning of creation there was no existence nor non-existence. And few verses ahead, very beautifully it describes that how then in that beginning, from thought there evolved a desire which existed as the primal semen, searching in the hearts through inspired thought. The great rishis, kavis found the connection of the existence in the non-existent. Or in other words, it is through the desire. Desire is that primal seed for this creation. And from the desire, the moment you say desire means something sentient or consciousness. Consciousness created this world. Consciousness influenced the way the universe manifested. To understand this in more simple terms, let's take the analogy of a building. Right? So, how does a building manifest? So, if you have to make your house, right? It's not that you will just say, okay, I need a house, and then the mason will just put the bricks together and the house comes, right? Perhaps the first thing you will do is have a conceptual design where you will go to an architect and explain the concept. Okay, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I want to see sunrise. That's my desire. So at the conceptual design stage, only a desire, the need is expressed by you, the ultimate user of this house. Then the architect will understand your concept, your vision, and translate that into what is called as a schematic design, wherein, okay, now, okay, if you want to see sunrise early in the morning, obviously there should be a window in your bedroom, first. And second, that window should be facing east, not north, not south, not west, but it has to be facing east. And that window should be in a height where when you're lying down from your bed, you should probably be able to see outside the window. The window should not be too high or it should not be too low. So that schematic, the schema of things is a second level of design, the schematic design. But before the architect comes up with the whole plan, first you, the ultimate user of this world, of this house, will have to present your concept, your desire. Or in other words, the entire house actually has manifested from your desire, from your specific needs. Right? This is a simple example of how consciousness has shaped matter, shaped how matter will be structured. Think of the universe also, whether it be this world or the spiritual world, the seed for that manifestation, the shape of that manifestation is desire. And this is the fundamental concept. In fact, this once you understand this concept, rest of this chapter makes a lot of sense, right? And because most of us, because we are coming from that conditioning of the modern physics where it's the universe is just an observable universe. So how does consciousness influence matter? So how does the desire of the jiva or the desire of the Lord anyway influence the way the world is, right? We immediately get disconnected there because somewhere in our worldview, the concept of how consciousness shapes matter, that concept is missing. So in this section of Bhagavatam, now the conceptual design is beautifully described. What exactly are the needs and how to fulfill those needs of the jiva, right? So in that, with this little background, let's try to understand the bigger scheme of things. So I'm going to set up a whiteboard. So tell me if you're able to see the whiteboard. Maybe Apurva, you can make a gesture. Yeah, great. Right. So in this, today we are going to see in this whiteboard the entire creation starting to manifest. Right. So this is how we'll see a whole overview of the creation from spiritual world to material world. Everything will be there on this screen right away. Right. So going back to something that we studied in our YTTC, if you remember when we discussed session number 2 of the Gita series, we discussed this golden formula. We discussed this principle that I said this is like the ultimate principle of this whole creation. I said this is like the string theory, the fundamental law of this creation, right? And in that, I spoke how this statement that I wrote, how facility that we have. Facility plus knowledge leads to an experience. Right? Experience is basically what? It's the fulfillment of desire. So this is the fundamental equation. Whether you are this world, that world, whichever world, this statement holds true wherever you are. So this is the blueprint. You can say the basic law that is governing the whole creation. Right now, because we need to understand that how spiritual world or spiritual dimension, it's not just some void, it's not just some black hole where everybody is just closing their eyes and in a state of peace, but rather there is an exchange of rasa, there is an exchange of spiritual mellows that is happening, that is creating a spiritual experience, right? So that spiritual experience to be manifested, there has to be some hardware, some facility, and knowledge of how to use that hardware, right? A simple example you can think of, whether it be spiritual world or this world, this law holds true, right? Like for example, I have a laptop in front of me. Now I may have a laptop, but if I don't have the knowledge of how to use this laptop, right? So yeah, maybe you can try avoiding touching the screen so that there'll be some marks that may come up, right? So you can try. Yeah, let me see if I can. Yeah, just try avoiding touching the screen, because when you touch your screen, the whiteboard will start marking, it will start acting funny here. Yeah, okay. So anyway, so coming back to our discussion, that how it is, this is the law. So the example is, so when you have a laptop, you have the facility. If you don't have knowledge, then the experience doesn't come. Sometimes you may have the knowledge, but the laptop is not there with you, then again the experience will not happen, right? So this principle holds true in the spiritual dimension. This facility aspect is called as Sandhini Shakti. The knowledge aspect is called as Samvit Shakti. And that experience is called Hladini. So the Sandhini, Samvit and Hladini potencies, they combine together and create that experience for Krishna. Whenever there is a rasa of a soul with Krishna, these three potencies are acting together, right? Like, for example, you want to play music for Krishna. So that musical instruments are a manifestation of the Sandhini potency. That knowledge of playing that beautiful kirtan for Krishna is a Samvit potency. And when your musical playing and the instrument, when they combine together, when they go into Krishna's ears and they manifest pleasure for Krishna, that's a manifestation of the Hladini potency. So these three energies together is what that are facilitating everything. The entire spiritual world is just run by these three Shaktis. So these three Shaktis, what are they? How are they facilitated by? It is said that this Sandhini potency, it is facilitated by Balaramji. And the Samvit potency is governed or overseen by a form of the Lord known as the Vasudeva potency. And this Hladini, we at one level we know it is Radharani herself, right? And that Radharani is non-different from Krishna. So Krishna himself is that master, because the ultimate experiencer of that pleasure is Krishna. So he is the master of that Hladini Shakti, right? So what are these three things doing? So this Sandhini Shakti, because it is and in the Vishnu Puran also, it's a very beautiful verse described that how Parasha Shaktir Vivudheshwate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha, that there are these three potencies of the Lord, that in Chaitanya Charitamrita also it is described that how Krishna has unlimited energies, but primarily they can be classified as these three Shaktis known as Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Ichha Shakti. Right? So think of it this way, that Ichha, ultimately everything in the spiritual world is happening for Krishna's pleasure. So Krishna is the master of that Ichha. But as soon as Krishna has a desire, I want to enjoy some music. So immediately Balramji manifests as a beautiful mridanga or some instrument. And then some devotee is inspired by this Vasudeva potency to start playing that instrument. Right? So that is how, with this combination of jnana, Ichha, or Ichha is also referred to as Bala in that verse that I quoted. So this Kriya, Jnana and Ichha Shaktis, all these three are finally manifestations of Krishna, who is that ultimate basis of all. All these are Krishna's expansions. The whole spiritual world, the show of the spiritual world is run by Krishna and his energies. So these Kriya, Jnana and Ichha Shaktis, these are energies of the Lord, whom he ultimately delegates to Kriya, he delegates to Balaram, Jnana, he delegates to Vasudeva, and Ichha Shakti, he keeps it with himself. And that is how the whole show of the spiritual world is running, right? Now, if this is the nature of the spiritual world, then what is happening in the material world? The same principle of facility and knowledge leading to experience holds true even in the material world. But now, in the material world, there are no spiritual energies. There is no Sandhini, Samvit and Hladini in the material world. Because the material world is covered by our ego. These energies exist in a place where there is no ego. So Krishna, he facilitates this material world. For what reason? This material world is a place for those rebellious souls who want to think they are Krishna. Why Krishna is the center of this whole universe? I want to be the center. And that is why every conditioned soul in this world thinks they are the center of the universe. They think everything revolves around them. Right? Or in other words, material world or that material consciousness is that state of consciousness where you think I am the center. But Krishna is so merciful, he doesn't punish us, but rather facilitates. Okay, you want to be the center, you want to be the enjoyer like me in the spiritual world, here you go. I create a world. But problem is, you cannot be the enjoyer in the spiritual world. The dynamics of the spiritual world are centered around Krishna. That's real pleasure. But if you want to be a pseudo Krishna, if you want to be that false center, I will give you a space where you can be that. Here you go. Let me create this material world for you, so that your desire to be the enjoyer can be facilitated. But remember, this is pseudo pleasure. Until you really reunite with me, until you find that yoga with me, real pleasure will not come. But may you learn it through your experience. Here you go. And Krishna, he starts creating this material world. And how does he create? Krishna, if you remember our first canto, third chapter, we discussed different avatars of the Lord. and we discussed the concept of the Purusha avatars, right? So the Purusha avatars are those avatars of the Lord who are directly involved in this creation activity. So there is the three Purusha avatars: Karno Daksha Vishnu, Kshiro Daksha Vishnu, Garbho Daksha Vishnus. So these three Vishnu avatars, Vishnu Rupas, Vishnu basically means controller. So Krishna expands as Mahavishnu or Karanodakashayi Vishnu. Right? Also referred to as Mahavishnu. So when in the previous verse when our Narad Muni or Brahmaji was saying Narayana Paro Yogo, Narayana Param, that Narayan he's referring to this Karnodaksha Vishnu as Mahavishnu as Narayan, right? So now this is where the material world begins. So this chapter actually starts elaborating. I gave you that background, whatever I told before. This is what this is how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains to Sanatan Goswami. This is captured in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter number 23. But this background will be relevant to understand what is the design source for this world. So if you remember, go back to our YTTC class, we spoke about the theory of causation, how there are these four causes. There is the material cause, upadana. There is nimitta, the instrumental cause. There is the ultimate cause, the hetu. And there is also the formal cause, the adhyatma. So the design of this world is borrowed from the spiritual world. So that concept, to show that, I started our discussion from there. Now, starting from this point on, Bhagavatam takes it from here. It says that how there is, in text number 21, it says, Kalam karma swabhavam cha mayesho mayaya swaya. So this Karnodaksha Vishnu, the Lord has two energies. So let's change the color because now it's going to be a dark material world. So let's use black color. So Karnodaksha Vishnu, we know he has the Lord has three energies. The Antaranga Shakti is the internal energies, and there is the external energy, and there is the marginal energy. So Tatasya Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, and Antaranga Shakti. Internal energy are all the spiritual energies which is above this line. So all that you saw, so imagine there is a dotted line somewhere here, right? Let's say there's a dotted line here. This is our boundary between the material and spiritual worlds, right? So this is all the internal energy above the dotted line. The marginal energy is the jiva. So how does the jiva enter into this world? The jiva has its karma and swabhava. Its karma and its nature. So carrying these two things, the jiva enters into this world, right? And the external energy basically manifests as kala and pradhana. So what is this pradhana? Pradhana is matter in its primordial state. When you use the word matter now today around us, this is activated matter, right? Like in baking terminologies, there is dry yeast and activated yeast. Both are yeast, but there is something called activated yeast, where now it's already bubbling. It's just ready. You don't have to wait any further, right? But still, it's not the cake yet. It is still a raw ingredient. It is a subtle state. So think of pradhan to be that state of matter where the gunas are not activated yet. So kala, time, is an activating force which stirs this pradhana and causes creation to take place. So that is highlighted, that how this external energy now starts transforming into this world, And this pradhana converts into the mahattattva, and the three gunas. So the gunas get activated and pradhan converts into the mahattattva. Again, what is that mahattattva? Think of mahattattva to be like the, in our YDTC, we discuss this example of how there is an untilled agricultural field and there's a tilled agricultural field. What is the difference? Both are fields, but the tilled agricultural field is ready for plantation. So if pradhan is like that untilled agricultural field, matter in its primordial state, mahattattva is now matter ready to go through transformations and begin the whole creation process, right? So that is highlighted in text number 22, that after the incarnation of the first Purusha, Karnodaksha Vishnu, the mahattattva takes place and then time is manifested, and in course of time the three qualities, the three gunas, they start to appear, right? And they start transforming. They go through what is called as vikaras. Vikaras means distortions. To be more precise, perhaps mutation would be a better word, because in transformation you can get your original substance back. Like ice transforms to water, water can again transform back into ice, right? But when something mutates, that mutation, the original object and the transformed object, they look very different, right? So the vikara is like this, something goes through like a major change in its state. So this mahattattva, it now starts to go through its major change. So mahattattva starts combining with each of these gunas, and that's how the entire creation now starts to manifest. Remember, again, for those of us who joined us late, this is right now the conceptual state. We still haven't gone to the blueprint. We still haven't gone to the bricks and mortar of creation. When we talk about creation, many times we think about the bricks and mortar part of creation, but that's a much later stage. Right now, Krishna is creating the concept. Oh, this is how the jiva wants to enjoy. Therefore, let me create a model for enjoyment, a conceptual design for which the enjoyment of the jiva can be facilitated. The experience of the jiva can be facilitated, right? And this transformation, how it happens, the mahattattva, it combines. So this mahattattva also, then it starts to combine with the sattva-guna, rajoguna and tamoguna, and it goes through different manifestations, right? So that in text number 24, very nicely it is described that the self-centered materialistic ego, mahat, thus being transformed into the three features, becomes known as Vaikarikas, Taijasa and Tamasa. So the sattvic part of the mahattattva is called Vaikarika. The rajasic part is called Taijasa. So let's write that down here. So there is the Vaikarika, or let's put it in a slightly different order. So I'll explain why I'm putting it in different order. So let's put the Vaikarika part in the middle. Then there is the Taijasa. So this is the Rajas part. This is the Sattva part. And there is the Tamasa creation, which is the product of Tamas. And from this, what happens? Dravya Shakti, Kriya Shakti and Grana Shakti manifest. So Dravya Shakti, Kriya Shakti and Jnana Shakti. So that, if you recall, we use the words Kriya, Jnana and Ichha in our previous discussion. So the same things now start to manifest. So so let's try to correlate with these things. So that what does desire do? Desire starts motion. It agitates equilibrium into a state of dynamic motion. So that Ichha part is a product of the Rajas. The Jnana part is that which maintains that equilibrium. It maintains that sense of balance within us. And the Kriya part is what that happens with, because when action takes place, action is taking place with the external matter, right? Like when things are moving, I'm moving this pen, right? Just by thinking of moving a pen, action is not done. Only when physical matter moves, that is when we say the external work is being done. So these three Shaktis, they start manifesting the Tamasi, Vaikarika and Rajasi aspects. Just like how the Kriya, Jnana and Ichha aspects, we are seeing a counterpart of them in this material part, in this material world. And how this whole manifestation now starts to begin. So Bhagavatam first describes how the tamasi creation first begins, the dravya, the ingredients part, which are involved in action. It says it all begins with, first it begins with the sound aspect. That sound creates, so that tanmatra sound, it creates the element of ether. And that ether leads to the next tanmatra of touch. And from there comes air. From there comes form, which leads to fire. And then there is taste, which leads to the element of water. And finally, that leads to smell, that creates smell, which creates the element of earth. Or in other words, air has a quality of touch and sound. Fire has the features of form, touch and sound. So as things get more sophisticated, it incorporates the features of all the previous tanmatras. So touch, sound, form, taste, these are called tanmatras. So matra means like a symbol, right? So the symbol for ether is sound, the symbol for air is touch, the symbol for fire is form. So these tanmatras, they capture the symbol of that physical element. So this is how the creation is explained, how first comes the tanmatra, and following the tanmatra then manifests. So the entire physical prakriti is what is manifested as part of this tamasi creation. Then as this whole creation further proceeds, now I have sound, ether, etc., but I need some means to capture these stimuli. How do I capture sound? How do I capture touch? How do I capture form? How do I capture taste and all of these aspects, right? So that is what is controlled. So you need some senses. So our 10 senses. What are the 10 senses? The 5 karmendriyas and the 5 jnanendriyas. So if you recall, go back to your YTTC notes on the 24 elements of Prakriti. So you'll have that list in front of you. The 5 karmendriyas and the 5 jnanendriyas, they manifest as a part of this Vaikarika creation, the sattvic part of the Mahat Tattva, right? And now that you have the 10 senses and the mind is like the master of all these senses, but that control doesn't just stop here. These senses in the mind are also further controlled by certain devatas. These are the sense controlling devatas. They are called as Vaikarika devatas. So again, understand, you may say, oh, creation didn't manifest yet, because for devatas to exist, there has to be Swargaloka. But we still didn't talk about creation of any lokas. That is the bricks and mortar part of creation. Where did these devatas come from? So these Vaikarika devatas, they exist from before even the dimensions manifest. In fact, Bhagavatam gives description of all these devatas. The Dikpalakas, the controller of directions, the Dik devatas, they control the ear. Then you have Surya, who controls your eyes, Vayu, who controls your skin, the Ashwini Kumaras, who control the nose, Varuna, who controls the tongue, Indra, who controls your hands, then Upendra. Upendra is not, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained that Upendra is not a Vamana, but another Devata by the name Upendra. He controls your feet. Agni controls your voice. Mitra controls the excretory organs, and Prajapati controls the reproductive organs. So all the 5 Karmendriyas and the 5 Jnanendriyas are controlled by certain devatas. So all these devatas also manifest. So again, understand, the jiva is practically useless in this material world. The jiva cannot even see properly without the help of these devatas. The jiva cannot even empty its bowels without the devatas. Right? So every function of the jiva in the material world is being facilitated, because for you, that is for us, existence in this world is like wearing a spacesuit and floating in outer space. For every motion I need to press a button. Right? If you are perspiring, press a button so that something comes and wipes your perspiration. If you are thirsty, press a button so that some tube will go into your mouth. You can't live in outer space like how you live on planet Earth. It's a totally alien environment, right? So think of the jiva's existence in material world to be like that, and we are wearing this space suit, and there are controllers. These devatas are these controllers of every function of this space suit, right? So the 10 senses in the mind, while they manifest, there are devatas who are specifically monitoring all the functions of these senses. If these devatas would not, if they cease to function, don't think your power of sight is coming because just you have retina, and right, that is more of a physical level, right? So if you again go back to our YTTC class, we discussed how the Vedic philosophy explains how the world is seen in these 3 layers. There is the Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika. Adhyatmika. Or if you remember, we use the word, this is the physical layer, what modern science is able to observe. This is the psychic layer, the metaphysical layer, right? And this is the spiritual aspect. So you, the spirit, facilitated by the devatas, are able to interact with matter and cause things to happen. This is how the Bhagavatam explains the jiva's existence in this world, right? So while the 10 sense devatas and the mind and the 10 senses, while they manifest, now what about the aspect of the Rajasi ahankar, the Rajasi creation, that Ichha, how does that manifest as? So that Ichha, it manifests as that the nature of, that conditioned nature of the living entity, and in the form of its intelligence, and the prana, right? So the while the sense devatas and the mind, they manifest here, the intelligence, the prana, and finally, how are we doing all our actions? So all these, while the sense devatas manifest in the Vaikarika creation, the senses themselves, they manifest as part of the Adhyatmika creation or the Rajasi creation. So the jiva, how is the jiva expressing its desire? and manifesting its desires through its intelligence, right? Every time there is a what do you mean by intelligence? All the creativity, some creative thought comes, some idea comes. That's a product of rajas. And that rajas agitates your prana, causes your senses to move, right? So many times students, when they read this section of the Bhagavatam, they sometimes wonder, oh, you are saying mind is a product of sattva and intelligence is a product of rajoguna, but isn't the intelligence higher than the mind? So that hierarchy that's not relevant here. This is more in terms of the function. So if you see, mind is that you can say, think of mind as a control center for all the senses. So if the devatas need to control your senses, they need access to your control center. So the devatas, they control your senses through the mind. So these 10 sense devatas, think of them having, they have access to your mind. They have some password to your mind. They can log in anytime. And whenever you have a desire, they facilitate. So the mind, therefore, is connected to that, the sattviki aspect of creation. Whereas that agitation, that creation, you see, because every action is preceded by an idea. You don't just act randomly, right? Like even right now, as I'm trying to communicate, so the action of words, the action of speaking, which I'm doing, it's happening because somewhere my intelligence is functioning and causing my vocal cords to move in a certain way. So intelligence through the channel of the mind, of course, right, is causing my prana to be agitated, and that pranic movement causes my vocal cords to move, and that's how the action of speech is taking place. So my desire, my ichha to present this class is happening because my intelligence, prana, and senses are involved in expressing this desire, right? So these three aspects, intelligence, prana, and the senses, they become part of the adhyatmika creation, or the rajasi, the taijasa creation, right? And so this whole thing, this is basically the whole creation. So you see all the 10, the five pancha mahabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ether, then the 5 tanmatras, smell, taste, form, touch, sound, then the 5 karmendriyas and the 5 jnanendriyas, 20 elements, then the mind, intelligence, and the ego, and the pradhan. Ego here is at mahat. All these 24 elements, they manifest for the sake of creating a conceptual design to fulfill the desire of the jiva in this material world. Or in other words, now the plan is set. If I have all these 24 elements ready, the jiva is now ready to enjoy this world. Of course, as we'll see later, that enjoyment is not real enjoyment, but at least that pseudo enjoyment which the jiva wanted and rebelled, and now wanted its own universe where it is the center, where the jiva is experiencing its own Krishna-ness for a change, right? So that for those rebellious conditioned souls, this is how the creation starts to manifest. So if you look carefully, even this diagram, I intentionally put it in a certain way. If you observe the whole diagram carefully, so I want you to think carefully and tell me what this reminds you of. I know I'm not a good artist, but still, try to guess.
Reflection of the tree.
Yes, the inverted banyan tree. That analogy that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita, Urdhva Moolam Adhashakam, Ashwadham Prahuravyayam, right? So this is how very beautifully you can see that connection between Bhagavatam and the Gita expression. The entire Vedantic philosophy is centered around this concept that how the design cause, the formal cause for this creation is coming on the basis of the spiritual world design. In the spiritual world, those experiences are centered around fulfillment of Krishna's desire. The material world is designed to fulfill the so-called desires of the jiva. But very interesting, the world can play two roles. This world can kind of facilitate your material desires, but at the same time, the world is also designed in such a way that if you so desire liberation, if you so desire spiritual elevation, this very same design can facilitate you. Because think about it, even in your spiritual practice, what do you interact with? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. You have to read books. What are books made up of? Matter. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. You want to sit down and meditate on a mantra. What are you doing there? It involves your mind. It involves your vocal cords. It involves sound and ether. So the very same elements can potentially bind you, but the very same elements can potentially liberate you. This is how beautifully Krishna designed this world. It's like a world which can simultaneously act as a prison and as a school. It's a choice you have to make. What are you expecting out of this world, right? It's like, I don't know, to lack of any better metaphors, right? But think of a food item that can be tikha and meetha. It can be spicy and sweet simultaneously. If you eat that wanting something sweet, that same foodstuff will give you sweet flavor. But if you eat that wanting something spicy, the very same foodstuff will give you, an expert cook only can make that. Right? So Krishna, being that expert cook, he designs this world so beautifully, right? And why a reflection of the spiritual world? Because that's the frame of reference for the jiva. For the jiva, who originally belongs to spiritual world, its concept of experience is based on that spiritual world experience. So using that same framework, Krishna very beautifully creates this world, right? And so many lessons we can learn from this section. One, we understand how the design is coming from the spiritual world, and spiritual world is a manifestation of Krishna himself. Therefore, Krishna is the formal cause, right? So, but what about the material ingredients that have gone into the creation? What about this Kala, Pradhana, Mahat Tattva, all of these? Are they independent? No. They are also manifestation of Krishna. So therefore, Krishna is also the material cause of this creation. Okay, but how are all these Pradhan and the Mahat Tattva and the Gunas interacting? What is it activating, that energizing force? Who is that instrument that is causing these vikaras, these transformations to take place? It is the time factor. Moment time starts to act with Pradhan, we saw how Pradhan acted up and started transforming into all these elements, right? So what is a time factor? Time is also manifestation of Krishna. So Krishna is also the instrumental cause of this creation. So he is the Upadana, he is the Nimitta, right? He is the Adhyatma Karan, the formal cause. And ultimately, and this is where things get little challenging, for whom is this whole creation? You may say the jiva. But as we saw last time, what is the jiva? Does jiva have an existence independent of Krishna? Right? In our YTTC classes also, we discussed the concept of sunlight and sun's light. How moonlight has no existence without sun. So the jiva's very existence, its consciousness, it has no meaning without the understanding that it is Krishna's own energy. If Krishna is that sun, Krishna is sharing some of its light, some of its consciousness with the jiva. So that is why that sometimes equivocal usage of the word Ishvara and Atma, Parabrahman and individual Brahman, when these words are used equivocally in Upanishads, it has to be understood this way. In terms of causation, the Jiva is not an independent entity, just like how matter is not independent of Krishna. Just like how we said matter is that Krishna, it is also to be understood that the Jiva Shakti is simultaneously one and different from that Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is also the ultimate cause of this creation. So therefore, this chapter, Prabhupada titled it as the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam, because all these four causes that the Vedanta talks about is Krishna. Well, to be more precise, he is Narayan, and the cause of that Narayan is Krishna. He is the Sarva Karana Karanam. Right? And therefore, very beautifully Prabhupada titles this chapter. When you read this chapter, you'll understand. And this is such a powerful chapter if you think about it. Next time when you are drinking water, you'll understand, oh, this water element is a manifestation of Krishna. I am drinking Krishna. In fact, as you're walking around, you will see all the beautiful trees and the mountains, and you'll see, oh, this is Krishna. So when you understand this chapter properly, while living in this world, you will realize, hey, actually, I can never be separate from Krishna. Even if I want to, there is nothing independent of Krishna. Krishna is at superset. There is nothing outside of that. So that is a beautiful understanding that comes out of this chapter. So while Krishna created this conceptual design, now this concept has to be converted into a schema of things, into a schematic design. And that schematic design, how Krishna now again manifests himself into that, while the concept Krishna created and all this he is doing through Karnodaksha Vishnu, now that Karnodaksha Vishnu expands as Garbhodaksha Vishnu and the schematic design begins. And that's what this chapter and the next, the remainder of this chapter and the next chapter talk about, which talks about the Purusha. The word that is used is Purusha, not to be confused with the Patanjali's definition of Purusha. Here the Purusha is referred to that supreme being. It is said in the Kena Upanishad that how while all the elements were there, the Devatas were there, all these things needed for experience were already there, intelligence is there, prana is there, senses are there, but the creation is not happening because that SIM card is not yet inserted into the phone. So that SIM card is Garbhodaksha Vishnu entering into the universe now, and within his body, the entire schema of things start to manifest. And in the Rig Veda, these are famous as the Purusha Sukta prayers. That cosmic person is described, that one who has hundreds of heads, hundreds of hands. The lower planetary systems are the lower part of his body. The middle planetary systems are the middle part of his body. The head is the upper part of this body. The concept of thinking is his head. The concept of doing is his hands. The concept of maintenance and resources are the stomach, and the concept of support are his lower feet. Right? The four varnas are connected to the body of that Purusha. So this very beautiful description that the Purusha Sukta gives, that is now repeated when it comes to the schematic design of this world will be described in this chapter, in the next chapter. So we will see that in our next class. So the creation pastime continues further into another class. So we will see that in our next class. All right. So let's pause our discussion here. Let me quickly save this whiteboard. I'll post it in our group so that we can, yeah. Okay, yeah. So let me exit this before. Okay, hold on. It is still saving that page. Okay. All right. Let's quickly open the discussion for the forum for any questions or I know it's a complicated topic. I thoroughly encourage you to again go through. Prabhupada gives some amazing purports, but with this diagram and this class as a reference, please go through the whole chapter again. Apurva, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hari
I
bol.
wanted to ask that you mentioned the 10 senses both in the sattvic and the rajasic aspect. Like, how do we...
So the sense devatas manifest in the sattvic aspect, and the rajasic aspect, the senses themselves manifest.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
the- yeah,
sattvic is...
part of the sattvic part, it's part of the rajasic creation only. Yeah, yeah.
And one more question, please.
Please.
So, in this chapter, the universal form is again described of the Lord, the different limbs of the Lord. And a few chapters before also we read that.
Yes.
So, like, why is it repeated?
Yes. Why is it repeating? Good question and good cross connection. So if you remember in the second canto, in the beginning, when what is the vision a yogi needs to meditate upon? If you remember, Ante Narayana Smriti was the conclusion which he gave. But how to remember Narayan? So for somebody who still has a materialistic conception, who cannot think beyond matter, for such a person, they personify this matter in a divine form. So the description of universal form given there is for a for a lack of better description, a yogi with a material worldview, how such a yogi can think of the Lord. Because a yogi with a material worldview cannot think of the Sachidananda Vigraha of the Lord. So for such a yogi, the entire universe itself becomes a gigantic body. So there, the description of the universal form is how a yogi needs to contemplate on the Lord in samadhi, to attain samadhi. Here, the universal form being described, the Purusha form being described, is how the schematic design of this world is made. And wait, again in third canto, again one more universal form is going to come, which is an elaboration of this creation pastime itself. So that there, the point where the devatas are created and the devatas are now, they start offering prayers so the creation can manifest. So in that section again, the universal form comes. So there it is just an extension of this same pastime that we are discussing here, right? So yeah, so the difference is there. So in the previous description that we saw there, it's not about how nothing to do with the design of the universe. It is just a way to visualize the Lord. Here we are specifically talking about the design of the universe. Hmm? Yeah.
Rosie, can I ask one more?
Yes, go ahead.
I forgot. Actually, yeah. So the you said right. This is a conceptual form of the Lord. So if visualize that, we zoom out, we won't see anything like that. But what did Arjuna see in the battlefield of Kurukshetra? If it's conceptual.
Oh, that's wait a second. So this is when I said this is the conceptual form of the Lord. I didn't say the conceptual form. I said it's a conceptual design. So the just like how in the building analogy, first the concept comes. That concept turns into a blueprint. That blueprint then turns into an architectural plan. And architectural plan, finally, the mason is sitting there and executing and putting bricks accordingly. So the creation is happening at multiple levels, right? So that is what is described in this section. So the first level, how to facilitate the jiva's desire. That concept, Krishna sat down and came up with this plan. And how he is going to translate that into what should be the height of the window, where should be the window, that's the universal form. That's coming next, right? In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the universal form described is the form of time. How that Krishna is facilitated, because Arjuna needed to be shown how those warriors, because of all the injustices they have done, the vikarma that they have done, they were destined to be killed. So that form of destiny, that form of time, Krishna shows. right? And that is why if you see that description is a very gory description, because what does time do? Time is that massive destructive force in this world. So only that aspect Krishna shows, but this is a more detailed form of the Purusha, of the universal form that Bhagavatam describes. So only a small functional aspect of that is what is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Yes, Harshika, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, sir. Very nice class. I had a question on, actually, you would have covered this, but I missed it because I joined late, on the spiritual world, Ichha. So actually, my question is, could you speak about Krishna's Ichha versus the Jiva's Ichha, and perhaps how Leela, Krishna's play or Leela comes in the creation process?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the Ichha of the spiritual dimension is centered around pleasure of Krishna. The Ichha of this world is centered around the ego of the Jiva. Right? So that's the fundamental difference. So to put it in simple words, when our Ichha aligns with Krishna's Ichha, we get access to Leelas. When our Ichhas are away from, are not in the purview of Krishna's Ichha, then we enter the world of karma and swabhava. So if you see, karma and Leelas both are actions, right? But Leela is a non-reactionary action. It's a play. Whereas karma is a reactionary action, which has implications. So when the Ichha Shakti is motivated by Ahankara, that leads to karma, entanglement, right? And swabhava. You may say, why did that Kriya, Jnana and Ichha Shaktis exist in the material world also? Because Jiva is a part and parcel of Krishna. If Krishna is Vibhuchit, is infinite consciousness, Jiva is Anuchit, but qualitatively they are same. If Krishna has Jnana, Kriya and Ichha Shaktis, Jiva also needs Jnana, Kriya and Ichha Shakti. It is just that Kriya is facilitated by Prakriti, Jnana is created by Paramatma and the Devatas, and Ichha, free will, it has on its own, that it retains. So the only thing we are accountable for in this world is our desire. Or in other words, the only spirituality means desire management. That's it. I can't even control the movement of my breath. Devatas are controlling that for me. The only thing within my purview is my desire. Right? So that's the understanding. So the Jiva also has its limited free will. That's where the Ichha in the dotted below the dot in the material world comes in, right? And the only thing we need to do is now align that Ichha with the spiritual Ichha of the Lord. Then we participate in Krishna's Leelas.
Thank you. That was really nice.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's end our discussion here. And please, I'll provide access to these classes, so please listen to them again. Today was a very heavy topic, so my apologies if it went bouncers over your heads. But it's a very fascinating topic, because personally for me, it shatters the whole worldview that how the world and us are completely independent realities. How consciousness and matter are so intertwined. This worldview can be understood only if you understand this aspect of creation. And today we are so conditioned by this modern scientific understanding of an observable universe that we isolate in, this is going a little overboard, but as you go deeper into the quantum realm, the idea of how an observer changes the way of what you observe, right? This very famous uncertainty principle and Schrodinger's cat experiment. If you get you can just Google for these things. Schrodinger's cat experiment. how the whole concept of multiverse emerges. These are all coming from these deeper concepts in quantum physics, which are centered around the concept where consciousness is influencing matter, right? And this wisdom is presented in the Bhagavatam, presented in the Sankhya philosophy. The entire Sankhya yoga philosophies, they're all centered around this concept that how consciousness shapes matter and not vice versa, or not as independent realities. So that whole worldview can be accessed. This is the seed to access that. This Bhagavatam creation theology is the seed to access that aspect. So until we align our worldview with this creation theory, we cannot access some of the other concepts explained later on in our Vedic sciences. So to me, this has always been a very fascinating topic, and there is so much more to it. I only could explain what I can understand, but there's so much more you can discover when you read these topics even more. All right, so let's Apura, you have a question?
Yes, sorry, just one thing I wanted to ask. When you say consciousness influences matter, and like how you started the class, so is it does it mean the rebellion that the Jivatma has shown towards Krishna? Does it only mean that, or is there any other expression to that?
The way this world is designed is a result of the collective egos of all of us. Collectively, we had a particular way of enjoyment or way of experience. Let's put it that way, because there is no enjoyment. Way of experience. So the way this world shaped, it is to facilitate your flavor of that enjoyment in that particular way, right? So that is why another universe could be totally different, because the collective egos there could be different, right? So the way the elements manifest there could be different. So that understanding, that's what I was trying to explain. All right, so let's end our discussion here. Thank you all so much. So see you next time. We'll continue this creation theory with chapter 6, Purusha Sukta prayers.